One of the greatest movie scenes, in my opinion anyway, happened in the 1990 film, A Few Good Men. Many of you have seen this. This is a movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. It's about a Marine base in Cuba where there was a murder. And Tom Cruise is the lawyer and Jack Nicholson is the colonel. At the very end of the film, there's a powerful courtroom scene where Tom Cruise is interrogating Jack Nicholson. And Nicholson says, "What do you want to hear?" And Tom Cruise says, and he kind of pounds his hand. He says, "I want the truth." Which with Jack Nicholson makes that famous statement, "You can't handle the truth." And what was the truth? Well, the truth was there was a homicide and it was the colonel's fault. And there was great dysfunction in this base, but it had to come out. The truth had to come out for healing to begin. And it was a hard truth. These are hard truths. There needed to be a confession so there could be a few more good men. And even though the truth was hard, it was good because it was out. We know that telling the truth is important. We don't think that you should tell everybody your dirty laundry. You have to tell everybody what's going on in your life. But when asked to speak the truth, it's important we say it. Whatever that truth is. But the question is, can we handle certain truths? And sometimes somebody has to call it out. Like in this Marine base, the dysfunction there had to be called out so that the healing and growth can begin. So the strength of any institution, the church, the world, the family, can begin. We hear in the first reading of the early church in the Acts of the Apostles and the machinations therein. And sometimes we are tempted to believe that, in the early days of the church, man, everything was great. Everybody got along. That is not true at all. There was conflict. There was growth. There was division. There was even cultural division. We hear today the Hellenists, the Greek-speaking Jews, the Hellenists were complaining against the Israelites, Jewish men, the apostles, that their widows and people were not being served. So you have two cultures coming together. When you bring two cultures together under the same religion, the same new religion, there's going to be conflict. And it has to be worked out. Somebody had to call it out, and they did. That's the beginning of how holy orders, the hierarchy began to be formed and crystallized. We hear today about the first deacons in the church. They weren't priests, they were deacons meant to work in the community, called to serve. And they pick them out. And even their names give you a little hint. There's, of Philip and a couple other guys, but the other guys' names were Greek. Different cultures coming together so that the church could grow. And the church was growing to build up the body of Christ. And as we look back on our history, it is good to always tell the truth, to tell our own truth. Don't let the world tell the truth about our church. Don't let them do that. They've been doing that for a long time. They'll throw things at us like the Crusades, the Inquisition, Galileo. It's up to you to find out what really happened. When you find out what really happened in those situations, it'll make you a stronger Christian, a stronger Catholic. But we have to start telling the truth about the history of our church, even the darker parts, because there's also good news, even, dare I say, recent good news that we should start telling. So, at the Protestant Reformation, Henry VIII, Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, all those guys, Christianity's broke into 1,000 pieces and started to decline. And at the same time, Islam was making inroads. It was a tough time. And really, since then, Christianity's kind of been declining. We have to admit that. in our country, it started off as a Protestant country, but because of immigrants, the Catholic faith became the largest denomination and grew, especially through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, into the 60s. But around mid-60s, late 60s, the church started to decline. We have to tell the truth. That happened. It happened. And we can blame a lot of things. We have to look at ourselves. We have to look at ourselves. Because I think, and we looked around in those days, the emphasis just changed from mission, holiness, conversion, sacraments, salvation. That kind of changed, and the emphasis became like social justice, poverty, healthcare, immigration, and global warming. That's what happened. And religious, and I lived in a religious congregation with the Christian brothers. They were devoted to teaching, and they wore these habits. But they took them off. No longer about conversion, holiness, salvation. It was more about college. We're a college prep. I remember hearing that a lot. It was about justice, generosity, not about conversion. And it took some people started to call it out, started to speak the truth. Some could handle it, some couldn't. And it actually came from the top. Pope Paul VI with Humanae Vitae and his teaching on contraception. John Paul II calling out liberation theology, calling out all leftist Marxist influences in the church. And even Francis, Pope Francis, and I was there when he said it. In 2016 at World Youth Day, we took a bunch of kids, 2.5 million young people, the most Catholic young people in the world, at World Youth Day in Poland. And Pope Francis talked to all of us. Now, he talked in Italian, but we had a little radio, a little transistor radio, translating into English for our kids. And I remember exactly what he said. He was talking about the spirituality of mission of the early church, sacrifice, martyrdom. And then he kind of pointed it all out there. He said, many of our young people, you have the spirituality of a couch because you're sitting around flipping on your TV, and all the kids were like, ooh, busted. Wow, spoke the truth. Some could handle it, some couldn't. What was awesome was just seeing hundreds and thousands of kids lining up to go to confession, desiring to go to confession. But these are truths about our history. We have to say them. But I would say now, and I've told you this before, but in the past few years, we have to start telling the good news. Look on the news. The church has got strength again. The church has got numbers. People are coming to us. Young men are coming to us because they realize that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that's either true or not. In places, unbelievably, like England, France, Canada, Austin. All my priest friends are saying, we're getting all these converts, all these people. It happens to me weekly with people. Somebody email me, I want to know about becoming Catholic. Now, having said that, sometimes you're here, and I've heard this a few times. People will talk about the Catholic Church as a cult. I've heard that. Some of you probably heard that. The Catholic Church is a cult. That word cult, the meaning has changed. That's where we get the word culture from. It just means small religion. But now it's something negative. But I would say to call the Catholic Church a cult is just ignorant and dumb, because it's the exact opposite. If you know anything about modern day cults, a cult was a little insular, brand new religion that somebody started up that makes you reject your family, brings you in. A modern day cult, one of the things that's different about it is that it's easy to get into. You join, they welcome you, they love bomb you, they take all of your stuff, and you're part of the family. That's what a cult does. It's easy to get into, but hard to get out of. They're hard to get out of. It's almost even dangerous. There's whole sections of law enforcement that help people escape cults. Well, the Catholic Church is the exact opposite of that. we're hard to get into and easy to get out. People come to us all the time. I want to become Catholic. Well, that's great. It's 9 months of classes, and you have to go through 3 annulments. You have to live like brother and sister. What? I have to what? There's actually a process, and it's not always easy. Sometimes it's time-consuming and uncomfortable. But if you leave the Catholic Church, no one's going after you. If you walk away, no one's going after you. Sometimes they call. Nobody called me. Didn't notice. Sorry. It's hard to get into and easy to get out of. It's the exact opposite. Jesus today in the gospel is talking to his apostles, and they are troubled. They're troubled because they're sensing that something bad's going to happen to Jesus, and they too will suffer. They too will go through a type of crucifixion, and they're not happy. They're scared. And Jesus doesn't send them, everything's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. He doesn't say that. He says, pick up your cross and follow me. Be men. And do not let your hearts be troubled, because I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Celebrate that and offer up your sufferings, and do so with good cheer, joy, and gratitude. Because what they knew, like Peter, when people left him, because he told them the truth about the Eucharist, and Jesus asked him, are you going to leave too? And what does he say? You have the words of everlasting life. Where are we supposed to go? Where are we supposed to go? Because even then he knew truth does matter. Truth does matter. Now, we run in and talk to people all the time that are not Catholic, not Christian, good people. And oftentimes they'll say things like, I know we're different religions, but we're all the same. All religions are the same. As long as you love each other, love God, that's all that matters. Well, I think people are starting to realize that that's not true. That things do matter. Truth does matter. And when God tugs at your heart, like he did the prodigal son, he gives us an opportunity to follow him, to take us where he wants to lead us, because he wants to give us the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard. Sometimes the truth is hard to handle, especially when it's in our face. I've shared this story with you before. I'll share it again because it's very formative in my life. Something that happened up at Scott and White Hospital just right here. When a lady asked me to go visit her son, who was Catholic at some point in his life, who was dying. Didn't tell me how or why, just tell me he was dying, and if I could go anoint him, hear his confession, give him all that stuff. Sure, no problem. And I go visit him, and I could tell him he was about my age, but he had lived hard. Big guy. Wasn't exactly the picture of health. Both of his legs had been amputated because of diabetes. And as I talked to him, got to know him, right when we were starting to get to important questions, all the doctors walked in. A bunch of doctors walked in. And they started to tell him that, his kidneys had shut down. His liver was Swiss cheese, I guess because of alcohol. He had diabetes, was raging. Everything was bad. And they said, you know what, we're going to put you on hospice. Put you on hospice. To which he said, or asked, what's hospice? And I sat back and said, okay, let's see if they're going to tell him the truth. Not really. They said, well, there was a little awkward silence there. So it just wants to make you comfortable. Just quality of life. Okay, that's all. That's what it was. We can have a good quality of life and make you comfortable. And then they walked out. He got it, though, because I asked him, do you know what they're talking about? He goes, yeah, the end of life. I said, yes. And then I said the D word, you're gonna die. That's a hard truth. And it's true, he was on his way out. But then as a spiritual father, I felt compelled to tell him the whole truth. Listen, man, you've been living a hard life, living for yourself. We have a chance to be right with God in the church, because if not, hell awaits. Let me say that again. If not, hell awaits. But you have a chance to be reconciled with God in the church. and let me hear your confession, anoint you, give you Eucharist. Now, he may have asked, if I do this, will I get right into heaven? This is where our Catholic faith kicks in. Well, maybe not right into heaven. You may have to be purged of all these sinful inclinations. You may be on staff in purgatory for a while. But that's justice and cleansing. And as 1 Corinthians 3 says, he will be saved, but only as through fire. It is good news. It is the truth. It's a hard truth. And we're asked to handle it and celebrate it. As Jesus says to us today, it's beautiful. And we'll sing a song. It's beautiful. I'm going to prepare a place for you. And we'll come back and take you with me. Doesn't that sound nice and sweet? It's true, it is. But he also tells them, pick up your cross and follow me. That to be grateful, and those who persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you because of me, rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. That's why I think, thank God, young men are coming back to us. The women have always been here. This church has always been mostly women. But the men are starting to come back. And the question is, can we accommodate them? Can we celebrate a truth? Can we handle it? Because when we handle it, celebrate it, pass it on, let them know that salvation is free, but it's not cheap. It's free, but it's not cheap. That we can handle the truth of Jesus Christ, and that he gave us a church. And then we won't have just a few good men, but lots of good men and women and families.